I grew up in the church, was Catholic, and I knew of God, but no relationship. It was a little different. And as I started coming here, I actually was hearing the word, not just like the process of just going and the routine. And I think it was October of '06, after graduation, I started feeling like a little gut feeling in my heart, and I was scared for a while to even come up because of my family background and what they would think.
We visited many churches when we were looking for a new church home several years ago, and I think that I personally resisted coming to Ewing Road because it was right here in my school community.
When Linda and I, wanted to get married, she said, look, we need to really go talk with the pastor so we can try to get ourselves right. I didn't really know what all that meant, but when I spoke with him and, we talked about receiving Christ, it really seemed like the right thing.
And for some reason in my mind, I thought, I can't go to church where I work, that I needed to have a separation of school, my school community, and where I go to church to worship. So for a long time, I resisted. We would drop by here and say we need to visit there, and we didn't. But then I think the first few times that we visited, we knew that it was the right place for us.
I guess they were fearful of losing who we were, but I mean, they'd seen the change in me anyway, so I don't think they understood or have understood. There were some battles between us and just me personally with my family along the way.
He called and there's water in the house, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll get out here as quickly as I can, and I just happened to I had to get permission to close the office, and it took a little bit longer than I had hoped, and by the time I left work, I work in Dallas, and by the time I left work, I had a hard time getting back to Cobb County, actually. They had several roads closed, and water was continuing to rise all over the place.
Well, my dad passed away. A Tuesday morning, David called me at school and said I needed to call my stepmom because the hospital had called. We knew he had been in the hospital for several days, but that was not unusual. He had been in the hospital a lot, but we had been to see him, and we thought he was getting better. And that Tuesday morning, they had called and said that he was in cardiac distress. So before we could even leave to get there, he had passed away.
It's funny how when you're not in the situation, everything looks so easy. And it always looked easy when I was a child watching my parents get along, and I thought everything was, for the most part, okay. And it was, I guess, but the challenges that they face as a couple, I totally didn't see as a child. And so coming into marriage, I had these false preconceived ideas of what marriage was actually going to be like.
Well, I would say at least on the first day, it was pretty scary because I was actually at the house for the water to basically go from 0 to 5 feet in 5 or 6 hours. You didn't know when it was going to stop, and it wasn't raining, so it was really hard to put it together in my head why the water just kept raising, where it was coming from, and when was it going to stop.
So I was out of school that week, of course, and Friday we buried him, and the Monday that I went back to work is when the flood happened. So we, escorted our children out of the building in a couple of feet of water. The water wasn't in the building, but was up to the building at that point. So I was going back to school very emotional anyway, but then to have that happen.
His layoff for me was a shock because he really was an integral part to a project. For me, I don't know how I was prepared, but I kind of was at peace. I kind of saw it coming, and that day I was like, okay.
When I finally left that first day, it was a good 5 feet, and I had the pets in the car and whatever little bit of valuables I could get, and it just was so surprising how fast it happened.
I would talk to my dad 2 or 3 times a day. And so that was a huge, huge loss for me and for my family, all of us, because we knew when to expect him to call. And I think that just all of the commotion of the flood itself, it filled that void for us, so we didn't feel that loss I mean, we still feel that loss, but it filled that void for us.
I guess that first night in the hotel room, I was really not talking. No, I don't want to say in shock. It's just like overwhelmed, a little overwhelmed. And
But another thing, insurance was out when we lost our jobs, and so when she found out she was pregnant, we thought we were covered through one policy. We found out that we weren't, and so all of a sudden we went from not having jobs, or secure jobs, or more secure jobs that were bringing in substantially more income, but also we were now, we had a baby on the way, and we didn't know how we were going to
Cover.
pay for it.
Throwing away things that I cannot replace. My oldest son is 27 years old. Things he made for me in kindergarten. I cherish that kind of stuff, but it's all gone.